Okay, welcome back everyone. So last lesson, we've created a beautiful looking crate that I am quite happy about. So now we're going to be looking into some cleanup principles that will help us with optimization. So as a beginner or an enthusiastic student looking to do things the right way, this is a crucial lesson for students because it teaches professional discipline in preparing their models for the next pipeline steps such as UV unwrapping, baking, and exporting, which we are going to be talking about in the last couple of chapters. So, why do we care about cleanup? In game engines specifically, they don't care about how your models necessarily look. They care about how it's built. Because a bad model will make your game performance heavy, and I'm sure no one here likes to play a slow or laggy game. So, even if your model looks super cool in Blender, things like n-gons, loose geometry, non-applied transforms, or hidden duplicates can cause errors that will come back probably to bite you. So ultimately, cleanup is about quality control. And although we are new learners to Blender, I'm assuming most of us, I would personally say that cleanup contributes to what separates the beginners from the pros. So, we've heard me mention each of these things a little bit before, so this video is going to sort of reiterate its importance. So to start, recall that an n-gon are faces with 5 or more sides. The reason why these shapes are not desired is because they can have an impact on your topology, shading, or deformation, which plays an effect when you start taking your prop into the next step when it comes time for texturing or animating it, both of which includes deforming the mesh. An example of what this looks like is back when I showcased the octagonal face for the corners a few videos early in this chapter. So just to get an idea of what that looked like, let's go ahead. If I bring back like a cube to start with, let's say this is what my corner looked like. And if I tab into edit mode and I try to subdivide these faces a little bit, which is what I did. So let's go a few times. So even though that this face, obviously to everyone, this looks like a square, it's actually made up of, well, 9 vertices over here. So therefore it is a 9-gon, or we just generalize it to n-gon. Now, of course, when you try to work with n-gons, let's say when you want to, I don't know, let's say if you want to inset a face. So if I press I and I start moving, you could see that I start to get a lot of funny business here. And after a certain point, I get glitchy behavior, which is not good. So let's say if I wasn't paying attention, oh yeah, this square looks perfect. Then I go ahead and extrude it, and then I get even more geometry that lies on the top. So everything's going to get messy very fast, and it's going to increase my mesh statistics for honestly no good reason. So instead, quads, which are 4-sided polygons, are generally preferred because Blender can simply interpret them better with all their provided tools and modifiers. In more complicated geometry, designing good topology with quads can create, well, first of all, nice geometry, but it would also make edge loops and further editing processes easier, especially when you want to animate your prop or anything that you create in Blender. Moreover, game engines like Unreal 5, for instance, often interpret objects by splitting them up into tries or triangles. And with quads, it's actually a lot easier to split a quad into 2 tries by, just connecting opposite vertices. So if I draw a quad here, if I want to split this into 2 triangles, well, the easiest thing to do, we just divide it in half across 2 opposite vertices. Now, for n-gons, when you have a very complicated shapes like this, your game engine is now going to have to guess a little bit on how to split this up into tries. Sometimes they'll have it the right way, sometimes they're going to do it the wrong way, and the wrong way can lead to more tries or glitchy behavior or bad deformation, none of the good stuff. So, this is why we often stick with quads for the most part. Okay, so let's go ahead and delete this and let's look at our crate. Okay, so back to our crate mesh. An example of meshes that have n-gons are actually these screws, since the base face is a hexagon. So as stated before, it is actually okay since prisms generally have n-gon bases. Not everything's a rectangular prism. Sometimes you may want something that's a little bit more like a cylinder, which means your base face is going to have more vertices. Now, for our screws, we don't have much going on here except texturing it to have like a simple gray metallic look. So in this case, because we're not deforming it anyway, it's okay that they have hexagon faces. Now, if you did have a hexagonal shape that you did want to deform and split up into quads, one way you could do that is, well, if I head into edit mode, I could press A on my keyboard to locate where the edited one is, which is this one. And because this face is a hexagon, the knife tool is actually a great tool for this instance. So in vertex select mode, I could use the knife tool. Oops, let's just deselect everything here. I could use the knife tool and cut a line between two vertices. And the knife tool, if it sees that you have a vertex nearby, it'll actually clip to it. And it's going to clip to this one as well. I'm going to select it. I don't want any more, so I can press enter on my keyboard. And what happens here is that I've split it up into two trapezoids, which are both quads. And of course, all these rectangles around are also quads. So that's one way that you can do it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and undo this because we don't need to increase our geometry and split it up into quads for this instance, but just keep that in the back of your mind in case you run into a problem of your own. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't think anything else in our crate is n-gons. Everything else has pretty much been made up of quads. So that's been great. So the next thing we want to talk about is the topic of stray vertices, or worse, doubled vertices. Now these are vertices that are sitting in the same spot, but they are not connected. We've actually seen an example of this before in the mirror modifier showcase when we turn the merge section off. And it's the same principle that we're chasing after here. There's no need to have vertices in the same spot, so what we do is we merge them together to get rid of it. In Blender, the easiest way to do that is to select your entire mesh, which you could do in object mode with A. Then in your outliner, just deselect things that you don't need. So obviously I don't want to make any edits to my reference. So I can actually hold Control and deselect it like this. Now, at this step, you want to go into edit mode, but just quickly, maybe some of you might run into this error. If you press tab on your keyboard, you're not going to get into edit mode, which we see that we don't have an option here. This is because that even though we selected some stuff, which are valid things to edit in edit mode, all of our selections here in our outliner are in this dark blue color. Now, if you remember, we want to have at least something selected with that light blue color, because that's what tells Blender what has priority selection. And it's going to use that priority selection to actually go into edit mode and bring everything else with it. Now, we don't have an instance with that, so at this point, you could just choose anything. I'm just going to choose, let's say, these screws here. Hold Control, and now I have something with priority selection. This now gives me the availability to enter edit mode. So we could tab into edit mode here, and all my meshes are now selected to work with. At this point in time, I can press A on my keyboard. This is going to select everything. Go to your vertex select, right click, or you can press M on your keyboard because I want to use this merge vertices selection. And then I'm going to merge them by distance. And you can see here that this is going to merge vertices together into one based on a small proximity distance. So if I select that, I get this little message on the bottom here that I've actually removed 20 vertices. Now these are probably stray vertices, which are random vertices floating around, or they were actually double vertices. So to reiterate, the purpose of doing this is that it prevents creating glitchy behavior, smoothing issues, and also broken seams when we start to talk about UVs. Now it's great that we've gone ahead and talked about this, but you can see in this specific instance, my top edges are starting to give me this funny business. And they start to go outside of my mesh, making it look ugly. Now, the reason that this happens is because I do still have modifiers that are being applied to this mesh. Now, the glitchy behavior or the funny business that I'm seeing here probably comes from the fact that one of the modifiers is referencing vertex information that I've seemingly got rid of by merging vertices. So this tells me that this is a step for merging vertices that I like to do at the end. Clean up all of your geometry, have it in place first, and then right at the very end, just press that final merge vertices and get it all done with at once. So because of that, and I led into some funny business here, I will go ahead and Control Z to put those vertices back, and let's focus on other aspects of cleanup first before we do this in the end. Now, we did mention I want to apply all the vertices. Now, before we do that, the last way, which is great at optimizing geometry, is actually deleting hidden faces. Now, these are the faces that are part of the mesh, which count towards these statistics, but they will actually never be visible to the player, and hence does not need to be included. And we actually have a lot of examples in this crate, which we're going to tackle one by one by going through every single mesh. So, before I start jumping in right away to delete faces, what you want to do is we should apply the modifiers that focus on editing geometry. So in this case, out of the different modifiers I've used, the only ones that actually edit my geometry or create new geometry are the bevel and the solidify modifiers. So I'm going to first go in object mode, and wherever I see a bevel or solidify modifier, I'm going to apply them. And I'm going to make sure that I apply the one at the top of the stack first in the off case that the mesh consists of both. So the first one that I want to start off with is the wall vents. And the reason I want to turn my attention here is because for my wall vents, the array and solidify modifier, they actually do make a difference between which one is first in your hierarchy. So you could see that if I move the array modifier first, things change a little bit. So what you want to do here, and if you have a case that's similar to this, if you don't want to have extra work, make sure that you place your solidifier modifier, I said solidifier, your solidify modifier at the top of the stack. Then if it does change, fiddle around with your array modifier to get something that you like. And once you're good with that, we can go ahead and just apply it one time. So I will go ahead and apply it like this. And the same case is for the vertical edge vents as well. If you have your array modifier first, make sure the solidifier modifier, I keep saying solidifier, just such a funny word. Anyways, make sure your solidify modifier is at the top of the stack. Switch your array modifier if needed, the details of it. And then once you're ready, go ahead and apply it. And just again, we don't need to apply any array or mirror modifiers because these modifiers, if you remember, they act as creating duplicates, not actually editing geometry. So I can still safely work on my original meshes. So now, with all the geometry in place, we're going to start removing hidden faces. Okay, so let's back up and apply these modifiers. So I have a bevel modifier, let's apply that. This one, there's my bevel. Bevel here. Apply. Other one's a mirror. Corners are good, nothing for my axis ref. Apply the bevel for my bottom mesh. Got mirrors here, we got more mirrors here. And the vents, we've only got arrays of mirrors. So this is good. So with all my geometry now in place, let's go ahead and start removing hidden faces. So let's start from the top. I'm going to start with the walls plane mesh. So that's this one. So in my walls plane mesh, if I tab into edit mode, so okay, this is going to give me the one over here. You can actually see that over here on the side, there are some faces on the side of this mesh, and even on the top here, that are always going to be hidden to the player. And hence they can be removed. So what is this going to look like? If I, where are my vertical edges? My vertical edges, if I hide them over here, these faces are the ones I'm talking about. So you can see here that I've highlighted it orange, but if I put the vertical edges back into place, you no longer see them. So therefore, these can be removed, and it's the same case for the top. So let's go ahead and I'm going to hide my top edges as well. Select these 4 faces around. Oh, I want my bottom edges, just for easy access to select them. Okay, then I'm going to press delete on my keyboard and press only faces, like this. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing for my vented walls. Let's go into edit mode. Select these faces around. And then delete only faces. Okay. Now we could hide back everything, which is good. So the next thing I want to move on is to while we're here, let's do the wall vents. So in the wall vents, we could actually see that these faces on the side of the vents. So these little faces over here, they are pressed up on the inside of the little space area. And with the array modifier, there's actually going to be a lot of them. So this is a good way to remove a lot more faces. So what I'm going to do is I am going to hide the walls vented mesh like this. Now in edit mode, oops, did I forget to select it? So select it in edit mode. Where is the first one? Okay, this is the first one. So we're going to select these little edges on the side over here. Press delete, only faces, and that's removing all of them. Okay, that's good. And we're going to do the same thing with these vertical edge vents. So just tab. And also, as a quick helpful suggestion, if you're looking around trying to figure out which one is your main one, you could look for that orange dot. That's sort of the origin of the one that you can edit with. But I also like to press A on my keyboard. And when you have statistics enabled, all the numbers and statistics will show up. That just makes navigating and finding it easier. Anyways, let's hide vertical meshes to get access to it. Delete the sides, only faces. There we go. Also, as we're going through this process, just keep an eye on the statistics, and you're going to slowly see it decrease. Most importantly, pay attention to how the faces and the tries decrease. Okay, next we're going to do the bottom edges. So in the bottom edges, we could see that the sides here are connected to the corners, which are going to be completely hidden. However, for the top, because the walls are a little bit thinner than the bottom edges, we can't remove the top face. Otherwise, we're going to get this giant hole. So let's do that. You could, and this is the face that I'm talking about. So we can't delete this one, only the ones pushed in towards the corners. So let's disable the corners, well, the visibility of it, select, and then delete. Only faces. There we go. Okay, the next thing down the list, we have the top edge connector. Now we're going to go to the top edge connector, which is over here. Same process. Each of these 4 faces are pushed into these edges. They're not going to be seen, so we can delete that. Okay, so hide the top edges, edit mode, and these are the faces that are not ever going to be seen. Delete, only faces. There we go. Okay, so for the case of the top edges, we have actually some faces on the outer sides here, but also some ones on the inner face here that are going to be hidden and hence can be deleted. So This is actually a little bit of a special one because this is, although it reports as one mesh in my outliner, it is consisted of multiple meshes. So to make deleting some of these faces easier, remember you could press L for a link select for that middle one, then you could press H on your keyboard to hide it. I'm going to hide my corners one time. So these faces are all going to be deleted like that. And of course, to unhide things that you've hidden with H, you just press Alt H, and it's going to bring it back. And we'll bring the corners back one time too. There you go. Next, the vertical edges. Same case, the top and bottom are not going to be shown. So let's do that. Hide my corners. Top face is not seen. Bottom face is not seen. Delete. Okay. Next thing is my corners here. So actually for my corners, every single face seems to be hidden in some way or another. So there's actually nothing to do here. The next one is the bottom. So same case, the faces that are pointed inside of each of the edges are not going to be seen. So select the bottom. Let's hide the bottom edges. And these are the faces that are never going to be seen. Delete only faces. There we go. Lastly, we have the screws. And in both the vertical and wall screws, the only face that is never going to be seen is the one that's actually pressed up against the wall. So let's do that. So vertical edge screws. There we go. So let's hide the vertical edges like this. And this inner face is the one that's not going to be seen. Only face. There we go. And now the same thing for the wall screws. Let's hide the vented wall. And this face is not going to be seen. There we go. So yeah, we've successfully gone through everything. And you can see that our statistics have also decreased quite a bit as well. Now, with all the micro optimizations out of the way, this is the time where we can start by applying these remaining modifiers in each mesh and just moving top to bottom in the stack, applying them where necessary. Also, again, if you have not been saving as you've been moving along, this is a good time to do that. So one helpful little tip when you're trying to apply all your modifiers, this little blue wrench in the outliner, this indicates that this mesh has some sort of modifier currently being applied to it. So this is a good way to double check your work to make sure that you've applied everything that you've needed. So let's do that. Apply everything. More applies, more applies. There we go. So now with all of my modifiers applied, we can now select all of the meshes with A. We don't want the crate ref, so tab into edit mode, select everything again with A. I'm actually going to disable statistics shortly because this looks horrendous to look at. No, not statistics. I wanted to disable edge lengths. There we go. This is my crate with everything selected. Now at this point, why are my screws not selected? Did I forget to apply something? Ah, I figured out why. It's because my outliner was too small. I did not have these applied. So yes, if your outliner is not big enough, it's going to be helpful to expand it a little bit this way, just to double check. That's why I couldn't find anything. Okay, now we could select everything, tap into edit mode, go to vertex select, right click, merge vertices by distance, and you could even see on the bottom that we removed 112 vertices, which is quite a lot. So, most low poly games have props that roughly range in that 5,000 to 10,000 tries range. And after all of the optimization and micro optimization that we've done, our crate, luckily, is no exception to that. So, you've done it. Your model is no longer just a messy Blender object. It is a very clean, structured, game-ready prop, which honestly is an incredible milestone, considering how just a few hours ago, or depending on when you first started this course, you possibly had little to no knowledge maybe on optimizing in Blender, or maybe even about anything about Blender at all. So yes, cleanup might not feel like the most glamorous, and maybe like a chore to some of you, but it is a skill that what makes you production ready. So remember, we are building habits that save time, prevent bugs, and it's going to make your collaboration easier down the line if you do ever decide to work on props in a team. So give yourself a huge pat on the back, but not too much because in the next chapter, we are going to tackle the world of UV unwrapping, where we are going to take our 3D object and flatten it to prepare it for painting materials and textures on top. So keep up the awesome work, everybody. I will see you in chapter 4.